Hello. How are you? This is Els Company from Bemis Crafty Corner, and today I'm gonna do my version. So, before somebody says I'm doing it wrong, I'm gonna do my version of repairing a book cover to make a journal. So this was a request, and I really didn't have it in me to destroy a book to do this, but I did recently purchase a book, and I asked for the book to be gutted. And when it got here, and it's an old book, this book is from like the 70s. When it got here, it was actually torn here on the spine. So, yeah. I want to keep the cover if at all possible. So, because I like this. This is pretty. So I want to keep this. I wanted to keep this, but I'm not going to be able to do that. And I did notice that the book liner over here, if you look, is improperly put in. Okay? So I don't know what I'm going to do as far as that goes. I may have to just, go with it and cover this book all the way to the edge if I want to keep the original cover. If not, I'm going to have to try and figure out how to get this off of here without it, because the fabric only comes to like right here, so there's not a lot of fabric to work with. So I may have to leave this as is and just kind of work around it, So let's talk about some of the things that we're going to be using to fix this, okay? I'll get this cover out of the way before we do any more damage to it. So to fix this, we need to reinforce that. And so to do that, we're going to use some Tyvek. And this is an old envelope. Somebody mailed it to me. And I saved these so I can use them. So we're going to be using a piece of this Tyvek. Actually, two pieces. One on the inside, one on the outside. And I went to the store and I found this. And it's like a faux leather. And it's got a nice thick back on it. So I think we might be able to use this. That is the hope. And of course we're going to be using some of my bookbinding glue. So without further ado, let me walk you through the parts and pieces and how we're going to do this, okay? I'll be right back. Okay, so I have glued in a piece of chipboard. Now, if I had cut this to a 1/2 inch, this is a 1-inch piece. If I cut this to a 1/2 inch, it's just too narrow for the space, and a full inch is just too much tension. So what I do is I cut it to 7/8 of an inch, and then I just used a little bit of glue, and I put this in here, and I'm going to put some weight on this and some clamps, top and bottom, just to hold it in place and make sure that I get a nice adhesion, okay? As soon as this dries, I'll be right back, and we will get started on putting some Tyvek in and getting this together, okay? Be right back. All right. Now, back in its position. So now we need to cover this with the Tyvek. So I'm going to get out my cutter, and I'm going to get out my piece of Tyvek here. And what we want is a piece that's about 4.5 inches or so wide. So I'm going to trim this edge, and I'm just going to trim it so I can make it even, okay? And then I'm going to turn this over, and we're going to cut a piece between 4.5 and 4 3/4, because we want it to cover our space and go into the divots. And I'm going to cut 2 pieces to this size, because I need one on the outside and I need one on the inside. Right, so let's clean up that edge. Let's turn this over. That. All right. Now from here, I'll use my scissors to cut this by hand. Pretty much. All right, so first things first, let's bring our book back in. You can see where this lays a little bit flatter now that it has that back piece in. Right. Look at that. It's a thing of beauty. Now, this doesn't matter. If this could be a little bit narrower, that's fine. But the more coverage you have, all the better, okay? So now, I have glue. I'm going to shake my glue, and we're going to be gluing this with a brush. All right. Glue. So my glue is 1 8-ounce bottle of Aleene's, about 2 ounces of clear Elmer's, and about 1 ounce of water. Just in case anybody's keeping track. Now, I don't want to go all the way to the edge here, because if I do, then when I push this down, I'm going to get glue all over my fabric, and I'm trying to salvage this cover. So, we're going to try really hard not to do that. I am going to make sure that I get into this little crack here, into that little space, and that's where it's damaged, so we're going to be careful on that end. Because right now, everything that we're doing is actually damaging the book further. So we don't want to overly damage it. But we do want to make sure that we get glue where we need it to be. Now, for the next part, you're going to want a bone folder. If you don't have a bone folder, that's okay. Just use a butter knife or, you know, a putty spatula. Go out and steal something out of Hubbard's shop, okay? All right. Put that over there. So now we've got our piece of Tyvek, which we are going to place on here. And we're going to be pushing this down. Let me get my bone folder here. Oh, where are you, my bone folder? There it is. Okay. So I'm going to use my bone folder to press this down. I want nice, good bondage here. Okay. And I want to get this pressed in. So I can use my bone folder to do that. And if I don't want to use a bone folder, then you can use like the back end of a brush and just push that into the crevice there, because you really want to get that in there. Now this is going to take about an hour to dry, okay? So I am going to put something on here to put weight on this, and I'm going to leave it alone, all right? So we're going to put weight on top of this, and we're going to leave it alone. I have a nice case full of washi tape. I'm going to leave this alone. You're not going to know this. Time is going to fly. But I'm going to wait at least an hour before I turn this book over. I'll be back. Okay, so I have my Tyvek on, and I did trim off the sides, you know, where it wasn't glued down, or I didn't glue it down, and I didn't want to go the whole width here because I didn't want the chance that this might show underneath the fabric. So we're going to turn this over, and now we're on the inside. I folded in the edges. I left them a little long, and I just folded them in and glued those down. And now we're going to glue down another piece of Tyvek over the top of this. Okay, so let me get out my reptile glue. And I can use my bookbinding glue if I want to, you know, whatever works. But let me get the glue on here. I just don't want to get out a brush and get it all gluey and just to put this down. So I'm just going to make sure that I get glue pretty much to my edges. And I'm going to put a liberal amount of glue on here. And you can use, you know, your 3-in-1 or whatever glue you want to use. Just don't use Elmer's. And then we're just going to put this on. And we're going to do pretty much the same thing here with the bone folder that we did on the other side. We're going to press this in. We want to make sure that we have it pretty centered. Okay. So once we have this on, again, we're going to let this dry for a while. And then we're going to move on to the next steps. And I'm just going to turn this over and show you what the next step is going to be. So the next step is going to be to take a piece of this faux leather, cut it to the width that we want. So it'll be about that wide on there. And then we'll glue this in place, and we will wrap this over the ends of the book, top and bottom, so that we have that piece on the end, okay? So I made sure that I pushed this all in here nice, and what I'm going to do is pull up my ends, both sides of my book cover, make sure that I keep that nice and glued in. And I'm just going to put a clamp on the top here, and I'm going to have this set up, and I'm going to square up my edges, and I'm just going to let this dry in this position, okay? So again, this is going to take a little while to dry. I'm going to go ahead and let this go. You guys won't realize it, but I'll be back in just a minute to show you what to do next, okay? So pause the video. Okay, we are dry. All right, so the next part here is we have to decide, do we want the stitching to show or do we want the stitching to be concealed? So, this is in. It's nicely glued down. Set into the ridge here. And it's nice and smooth on the outside. So, now we have to decide, when we put our stitching in to put in our paper, do we want that to show on the outside of our fabric, you know, of our cover here, or do we want to conceal that? Okay, so the next step is going to be to make a template for this and to be able to put in our pages. So this book is now repaired and can be completed however I choose to complete it, whether that be putting on this piece and then stitching through it and having my cord on the outside, doing a hidden binding on the inside. This book is now repaired, okay? Tyvek is very, very strong. It doesn't tear, so this book will last for a very long time with this new Tyvek binding on it, okay? So I'm going to be using this book in an upcoming journal. I'm just waiting. I have to have special paper made for it, so I'm waiting for that paper to be dyed to finish the dyeing process, and then I'm going to go ahead and get started on making this book. So the next time you see this book, I shall be making a journal out of it. But for now, we have done what we set out to do, and that is to repair this binding so that we can make a journal out of this book, and it will last a very long time. Listen, if you have any questions about this video or about this process, do not hesitate to reach out, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have. If this is the first time you're here, I want to welcome you and say, hey, thanks for stopping, and do me a favor, hit the red button for me and subscribe, like me, ring my bell, and share me with all your friends, and then your friends can be my friends, and my friends can be your friends, and our friends can get to be friends, and then you know what we end up with? A community, guys. Until the next time, take care of yourselves. Stay safe. Bye-bye.